Welcome to Season 3 of Under the Sisterhood, Women Making the World Healthier. Our conversations will focus on the themes of women's health and wellness with a new episode every Friday until the end of the year. We will discuss topics ranging from sexual health to mental health while learning from the accomplished practitioners who make women's healthcare possible. This is a podcast to celebrate women and all they do in our role. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein. Let's get under the hood. Today, we're getting under the hood with Dr. Rachel-Yvonne Talton, a daughter, sister, friend, women's advocate, author, and founder and CEO of Synergy International Limited Incorporated. Dr. Rachel is a visionary leader pioneering in leadership, diversity, and organizational transformation. Her firm, Synergy International Limited, exemplifies her commitment to inclusivity, effectiveness, and trust in diverse organizational environments. Synergy's transformative work includes collaborations with Amazon on leadership development and inclusivity, with Pinterest on inclusive leadership strategies, and with Rag & Bone on talent management and leadership development. These projects highlight Synergy's significant role in driving organizational change and promoting diversity and inclusion. Dr. Rachel's contributions have earned her numerous accolades. In 2023, she was honored as a BOW Knows Growth Awardee and received the Trailblazer Award from Derby Diversity Week. She was also named one of the Enterprising Women of the Year in 2022, and in 2021, she received multiple awards, including recognition from the Greater Akron Chamber of Commerce, Smart Business Magazine, and the Soul of Philanthropy. As an author, Dr. Rachel's bestseller, Flourish, Have It All Without Losing Yourself, offers insights into achieving success with personal well-being. Her upcoming book, The Sixth Level, advocates for the sixth level of leadership, focusing on human connections and organizations. In her leadership roles, Dr. Rachel has been influential as the chair of the governance committee on the Akron Community Foundation Board, co-founder of the Black Giving Collective, and chair of the programming committee of the BOW Collective. She also served as the chair of the marketing committee for Destination Cleveland, demonstrating her experience in strategic marketing and community development. Wow, welcome, Dr. Rachel.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm exhausted listening to all of that. But it's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today, Elizabeth. It is, when we first met, when we did our podcast on the sixth level, you and I just connected at a soul level. And so I'm so excited to be here today to share with you, to uplift and support the women who listen to Under the Sisterhood, and to take our message global as we continue this work into 2024.
Thank you so much. That is so beautiful. And I do want to highlight one thing, which is, women struggle with really owning their amazing bios and their introductions. I mean, we go through this list of accolades and accomplishments, and for some reason we're uncomfortable with it, but it's such a beautiful thing, and you have so much to be proud of. You're doing such important work because when people feel part of something and included, everything changes in their life. So with that, it's season 3, Women Making the World Healthier. You are doing such interesting work, and I know that when we did the event, which really got into the sixth level of leadership, and we talked about building trust, you had so much to say on that. And really, that's sort of been your mission. So if it's okay, I'd love to get going.
Yes, let's get going.
Wonderful. So I asked this question to every woman, and it's not generic, but it's kind of generic. And the question is really, if you could take us on your journey of what got you into really, I would argue, health and wellness, but really a greater wellness and well-being focus in your career.
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you so much for asking it, Elizabeth. So when you ask about a journey, sometimes people can start like last week, but I'm going to start when I was 6. I'm going to go back to when I was 6 years old, and my babysitter let me watch the movie Sybil. Now, I'm a Gen Xer, so some of those who are younger may not know about the movie, but I know you and I know about it. And it is about a woman who had 27 personalities, and she struggled, obviously, with that. So at the age of 6, I saw this movie, and I don't even think I blinked during the movie. Like, I was absolutely mesmerized, and I wanted to jump through the screen and hold her and put her back together. Interestingly, I knew I could. Something inside of me said, you can, like, if you could get in there, you could help her. And so people have been calling me Dr. Rachel since I was 6 or 7 years old. Like, I was the one that you came to if you had a problem, if someone was picking on you, no matter what, I was going to be there to help. I was there to moderate. And so anyway, after watching Sybil, I went to my mom and I said, Mommy, I want to do the job that puts Sybil back together. And my mom had never seen the movie, and she was like, who let you watch this movie? Where is my 6-year-old? And what have you done with her? But then, I explained it to her, and she started buying me books on psychology, Jung and Freud, and all of this stuff at such a young age. But I understood that the power of wellness, as you put it, is about physical wellness, of course, but it is also about our mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological wellness. And that's what I wanted to focus on. And so, so the journey started there. I was very, very focused on becoming what was then a psychiatrist, focused on abnormal psychiatry. I went to undergrad, and my major was psych pre-med. And in about my junior year, I was like, I'm going to have to go to school for another 35 years in order to become an abnormal psychiatrist. I'm going to have to go to medical school and then get my PhD, et cetera. And I was like, I don't want to go to school for that long, so let me figure this out. And interestingly, I happened upon a job in banking, literally just for the summer. It was like almost an internship to me. I had never taken a business class in my life. And it was weird. Maybe by the second week, I was like, this is awesome. I get to help people make decisions. I get to still kind of help them think about, having a better life. And I get paid more sooner. So the stars opened up, and they aligned, and I fell in love with banking and marketing. Yep. So that's the beginning of this journey that led me to ultimately getting my MBA in finance. I still can't count, but who's counting? And my PhD. I'll share one quick story with you, and that is that I was married at the time. I had never wanted to get married, never wanted kids. My love has always been broad, like the whole world. I wanted to help everybody. And so I didn't want to focus on just my household, if that makes any sense. I'm sure it does.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally does.
And so I fell in love with this 6'8", 300-pound attorney, who was a sex crimes prosecutor, actually, in Brooklyn. And I just couldn't imagine my life without him. So we got married, and he was just my best friend, the best decision I ever made. And on a Tuesday, March 12th, 2002, he went to work and had a heart attack and never came home. And that just changed my life, my perspective, my desire to do what I now know is my God job. So I was in banking. I was happy. I was headed to chief marketing officer. And so after he passed away, I went to Case Western Reserve, to apply for the PhD program. And I said, I want to create a company that is beloved. I want a PhD in how to create a beloved company. A lot of that had to do with having lost Mark. I mean, back to this notion that health is something that we see, but it is also something that we don't see, right? It is spiritual, psychological, emotional, mental. Mark loved me more than breathing, more than life itself. And I loved him more than life itself. And I just felt like I needed to do something more meaningful. And so I started Synergy, went and got my PhD, didn't get it in love. Ultimately, after about a year of study, I realized you can't create love, but you can create trust. And just digging into this notion of earning trust, maintaining it, and importantly, repairing trust when it is broken has been just the foundation of our work at Synergy.
Wow. That's first of all, thank you for sharing. And what an incredible story. I want to go back a little. There's so much to unpack here. You must have been a really interesting little girl. I mean, at 6 years old to want to put Sybil back together is pretty friggin' spectacular. Because that's some seriously scary stuff. I mean, my brothers watched Sybil. I did not watch Sybil. I would not have slept for a year. But to know that about yourself. So, it's funny, it's ironic now that your mission is all about building trust and maintaining trust and sustaining trust, if you will. But at that age, there was something in you that had that trust in self.
Yes.
Like inherently baked into you. And then you went on this journey. And it's interesting because you described going off and going into banking and into marketing, which does allow you to deal with consumer behaviors. So you can you make them love your brand or trust your brand?
Right.
Do they trust this bank? Is this the place they want to go to? So it does really buy into all of the premise of that work. But I really am intrigued by your comment around, I wanted to do more meaningful work. And so first of all, I want to applaud the fact that you went back, you then got your PhD, and you said, I'm going to learn and work on trust. Can you talk a little bit about and I know, because I wanted to kind of take us on a journey of, you go back for your PhD to Case Western. Was it trust the subject? What was that? And what was the learning there that you then now forms Synergy, which has given you basically a foundation of trust and really a very interesting breeding ground of content and expertise that the world needs all the time. Like it's such an enduring promise, to your point. So if you could share that, going back to your PhD, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So I did get my MBA and focused on finance, and I was like, I'm never going back to school. I said I wasn't going to go to school for 100 years, and here I am going to Case and asking them. There's not enough literature on building a beloved organization. That's what I went there to do. And really sort of studied conscious capitalism and what was then ESG, right? And really looking at the values of an organization and how those values, 70% of the decisions that we make are based on emotion. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how good you are, right? 70% of the decisions that we make, whether they be business or personal, are based on how we feel. And so really sort of tapping into how organizations can show their employees that they are valued, and their obviously their customers and other stakeholders, how they are valued. But what I found is that again, an organization can become beloved, but it is through trust that happens. You can't get to love, at least organizationally, without a foundation of trust. And so I just started becoming very, very interested in in that characteristic of individuals and organizations that are trusted. And then I started, really building the work around how can I help people to become more trustworthy? How can I help people to, again, earn and maintain that trust, but also repair it? Because I had come from banking, and we were in 2007, right? 2006 to 2008, where banking was literally losing all of its trust, right? And so really looking at banking, retail, hospitals, to understand what are those connections to the perception of value for employees and the perception of value for consumers. At the end of the day, that foundation is trust. And so really, I don't want to bore you to death, but I do think since
Not
we're
boring,
talking.
by the way. This is very interesting.
Thank you. Let me just tell you a little bit about trust. So the scientific definition of trust is the willingness to be vulnerable.
That's so interesting. I didn't
It
know
is
that.
so interesting,
Who would
right?
have thunk that?
Would have thought, but if I trust you, then I am vulnerable to you. You can or help me, right? And so again, when I trust you, I am vulnerable. If I trust information, I am vulnerable. When I walk into a supermarket, I trust that the food is not, hasn't been tampered with, right? I trust. That is vulnerability. That is the definition of trust. The definition of trustworthiness is comprised of 3 elements, and those elements are competence, right? And so when I went I had thyroid cancer, and went to my, didn't know, I just thought I had strep throat, went because I really don't get sick very often. So went to the doctor, found out that I had thyroid cancer. And so I had to find someone who was competent, right, to open my throat, remove my thyroid, and do that with all of the expertise and experience that I desired. So that's number 1. Number 2 is benevolence, right? And so when I say the word benevolence, I always think about my grandmother, who had 19 children. My mom was one of them. Yes, 19, no twins.
There's no words for that
No,
one.
you're right. There's no words. No. And that may be one of the reasons I didn't want kids, right? I was like, we have enough people in our family.
That all makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So she passed away when I was 16, and she's just my absolute angel. Even to this day, she is right here cheering me on, and she's literally my spiritual angel. She was just the most giving, caring human that I'd ever known. The only one who might compare to her in terms of benevolence is my current husband, who I've been married to for 19 years. I'll get into him in a moment, but benevolence is really this notion of how can I put the needs of others before myself, or at least aligned with my own, right? And so that's benevolence. Do you trust me that I'm a good person, and that I have your back, and that I'm willing to give to you in order to make your life better? So that's benevolence. Now, as much as I love my grandmother, I trust her with my life, I would not trust her to do my taxes, because she only finished the 8th grade, right? So competence, I can trust your benevolence and not necessarily your competence, right? That's interesting, right? And so the final element of trustworthiness is integrity. Now, usually we think of integrity as high moral standards and high ethical standards. It isn't necessarily that. It's shared values. So in the mafia, for example, they trust each other to go and break someone's legs because their values are shared. It is not necessarily high morals. You and I have high moral standards, so we assume that others do too, but it isn't just that, it's shared values. Trusting someone whose integrity is aligned with your own, means that you trust their integrity and their high moral standards. If you don't necessarily have high moral standards and you trust someone who shares your values, then you can trust them the same amount as the person with high moral standards. So again, you can trust someone in one dimension and not necessarily in the other two. I try to help leaders earn trust across all three.
That is so fascinating to me, because I think you hit on something which you said a little earlier, which is I work with companies in building trust and ensuring trust and repairing trust. But the truth is, if you look at the individual and you look at trustworthiness, these three characteristics that make up, it's incumbent upon each of us as human beings
That part.
to have trust, be trustworthy, and all of that. And that,
Yes.
I think that building those relationships, I think you could be doing this you probably are doing outside of organizations, but when one is trustworthy within, you go into organizations, and that's those types of values and that level of integrity and being is what can be contagious, according when you're not in a toxic culture. But I do want to say something else. I think that that's really, really interesting, because sometimes I have trust issues. I'm going to raise my hand and tell you I am a very trustworthy person, but I have issues trusting others. And not because I'm projecting and I do these immoral things, actually quite the opposite, because I have had things which have been irreparable that are untrustworthy. And I think what you've pointed out, as you've described it, Dr. Rachel, is that it is so nuanced. You might have these three characteristics, but even within those three characteristics, there's different layers and dimensions to each one.
Yes.
So to your point of, if you don't have shared values with integrity, but you understand that your values are different, so you have a different type of integrity, mafia or
Right.
Dr. Rachel, it's really, really, so that you might trust someone who's in the mafia because you are sharing the same type of experience and mindset, but there's all these nuances to it. And I'm sitting here and this is like a therapy session, but keep going.
Yeah, no, it is. It's interesting. And so people ask me, how do I go in and talk to people who have no interest in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, or who are not trying to be effective leaders? They just aren't interested in those things. And the way that I do it is I find a shared value. And you can do that with any other human, no matter who it is. You can find one or two values that you share and start there, right? And so that is the way that I do it. You start with the shared value and you build on that.
That's amazing. So I know that you said that, I think you've been in business for over 20 years now, Synergy?
Yes, we've been in business for 21 years. And let me just say, after Mark passed away, I started Synergy, went to start my PhD, and I met Jim. I know that Mark went to heaven and found Jimmy for me. I'm convinced of it. Absolutely convinced that he went to heaven. I can picture him having a conversation with my dad, who's also there, and they just chose Jimmy for me. Again, after he passed away, I was like, Lord, I told you I didn't want to get married. This is too painful. But he sent me, Mark sent me the perfect person. He is just my heart. He's a spiritual man. He's a brilliant man. He is a loving, caring human being. He is so empathetic and giving. He's just so even though I had this tragedy that changed the trajectory of my professional and personal life, taught me so many lessons, who gets to have two great loves in their life?
I actually, I have to interject here.
Please do.
I,
Yes.
I was thinking about this. How lucky are you to have
Yes.
two loves, to have met two men who have shared values, one.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that because if trust has been part of your like kind of DNA, it sounds like it was part of your DNA when you were with Mark, if you will, but
Yeah.
but you established it more as a um I don't know, a foundation or a structure in which you guide other people through your PhD, but it sounds like it was part of who you were. And so because you had to have that to end up being able to have these qualitative relationships. You can't, back to the how do you become a beloved brand? How do you become a beloved person? Is you have to build trust with another, right?
Yeah. And a big part of that is being trustworthy. So you said something a few minutes ago. I have trust issues, Dr. Rachel. I have trust issues. You have no idea how many clients I have who come to me for that very reason. And I define things for them, help them to understand what things mean, and then help them to understand that vulnerability is the definition of trust. So even if you've been hurt before, even if you've been traumatized, because a lot of this is trauma informed, you even said it yourself. I've been through situations where, I touched the fire, it's hot, I'm not gonna touch it again. You know what I mean? And so we work through ways in which you can get there and feel some level of control, because a part of it is also wanting to control and be in control. And vulnerability is literally the opposite of that, right? And so some of it is about faith, some of it is about, I can only control my own actions, so I will be as good a person every day that I can be. Right. And so that's the start. Even if you have trust issues, you can start to work on where are my shared values with whoever I'm in the room with, and how can I be a model for good, even if something bad happens, that I will continue to trust myself and I will continue to trust the universe.
I love that. I so love that. And I resonate. I have goosebumps right now, audience. I mean, because it's so powerful. It's really true. And actually I'm on my second mountain journey, my spiritual journey. And I can relate to that because I think trusting in the universe, it's self and universe. So if you do all that work, that self-care work, so you can trust self because you built self, then you can go out and believe that, and then there's other things that just are completely out of your control
That
and
are out of your control.
never gonna be under
Absolutely.
control. And so
Yeah.
love that.
And then here's another piece of this as well, Elizabeth. There's sometimes things are just going to be hard, right? It's not going to always be easy. Sometimes it's going to be hard, and the question is, it's not whether or not you're going to go through the shit, pardon my French, right? But it's how do you react to it? How do you respond to it? Something came to me. I was going through a rough time, maybe about 5 years ago. And I was like, Lord, just talking to God and saying, you put me down here on this mat, Lord, I'm on the floor. And then I thought to myself, well, are you looking at the dust bunnies? That literally just came to me. Are you looking at the dust bunnies? Why are you so worried about being on the floor? There might be something good down there. Why are you ignoring the dust bunnies?
So it's like you've been put there.
Thank you.
At the right time,
At the
with
right
the
time.
right lesson.
Right.
So
You know what I mean? And it's like spook, paradigm shift. Well, wait a minute. I'm down here. What can I do? What can I do to better myself even if I'm down here?
that's almost a metaphor, even though I guess it is a metaphor, but it might be in real life. I mean, it's got that dual sort of nature to it. And I think that that's a really good point. I think that when we get to a bad space mentally, usually it's mentally, sometimes it's physically, but usually it's mentally and emotionally, we always look at it from the negative, but we never, and it's interesting because I myself was just having the same conversation with my daughter. And I said, everybody has a story. Everybody's dealing with problems. And if I went down the list of things I could, whatever, I'm like, I could look at it very negatively, but I choose to not live my life that way. And so I think back to your point, Dr. Rachel, is like, how do we as humans show up every day? Women, how do we as women, how do we show up as our best selves every day? Knowing that some days you're going to show up as a better self than the day before or a lesser self, but you're showing up because you care to show up, because that is part of your shared values, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And what a powerful lesson that you gave to your daughter. I mean, and sometimes we have to learn these things ourselves. But they, and so just taking that, I'll share, let me just, this is, I feel like I'm kind of jumping around, but this just came to me when I wrote Flourish. I had been married to Jim. We got married in 2007. And so we've been together for, I think, 19 years, and married for 17 years, 16 or 17 years, 16 years. And we had been married maybe 5 years, maybe 3 or 4 years, 5 years. And I was in the bathroom getting ready. I was chairing a committee on a board. Our business was going well. I was married to the love of my life. I belonged to all of these organizations. On paper, I felt like I should be flourishing. And literally I was putting my makeup on and I looked at myself, saw myself in the mirror. Now, looking at yourself and seeing yourself are two different things. So I saw myself and I started crying. And I thought, and I felt immediately guilty. Like, what on earth are you crying for? You're so blessed, like you have everything. You're going to go out, get in your fancy car. You're going to leave this fancy house. You're going to, you're healthy, your family's healthy, or, what are you crying about? And I thought to myself, if I'm not flourishing, that's where the name came from. If I'm not flourishing, then there must be other women who feel the same way. And so I started doing research on what does it mean to flourish? What is the definition of flourishing? And that's when I wrote the book, Flourish, Have It All Without Losing Yourself. And there are 6 dimensions that I'll share with you, because I think these are important as we're talking about whole self health, whole self wellness, right?
Love it.
So the definition of flourishing is to grow luxuriantly. Right? Grow luxuriantly.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's like beautiful, beautiful. And so I designed this model where these are the elements of flourishing, and I'll share them with you. And it's really about primacy. It's about what's important at this moment. So there's spirit, right? Your spiritual self. It's not about religion. It has nothing to do with that. It is about understanding that there's something outside of you that matters. It's about consciousness. It's about mindfulness, right? It's about faith in something. There is self-care. So that's not just about broccoli and yoga. It is about caring for yourself inside and out. truly caring for yourself. It's not just about getting the manicure and the massage. It is about caring for yourself from the inside out. It is about success. And women often, to your point earlier, we don't like to talk about our work, and we never want to talk about wealth, or at least very seldom do we want to talk about wealth. But success is about your work, your contribution, and your wealth. How are we building it? What legacy are we leaving behind? Speaking of legacy, there is also the important element of legacy. Legacy is another element of flourishing. It's not just about the person that you are today. It's living into the memory and the legacy that you leave behind. Is it financial? Is it social? Is it mental and emotional? Is it, what are you doing today that you can leave behind that people will remember 50 years after you're gone? 2 days after you're gone, they'll be crying. 50 years after you're gone, what will people remember you for? What will your contribution be? Right?
I love that.
So there's what is your contribution? Right? There is building that, not just when you leave, but really creating that contribution that matters. Are you making the world a better place every single day that you're here? And so those are the elements of flourishing. So some days my health will be the most important thing. Other days work will be more important than health or family and friends. By the way, synergy is another, and that's your relationships. There's a concentric circle that goes out, those closest to you, your work colleagues, and the whole world. How are you relating to the whole world? So there are times when those relationships are going to be more important, times when work will be more important, times when self-care has to go out the window because, I got a paper due tomorrow, or a client contract due, deliverable due, tomorrow. And so it's really about understanding where you are, understanding what you need and what is most important to you at that moment. And really kind of checking in with yourself in terms of where you are across those 6 dimensions. And that just makes such a huge difference. So Flourish, Have It All Without Losing Yourself was really born out of my feeling that I had contributed so much, but didn't feel whole. I have all these blessings and didn't feel whole. And once I wrote the book and was able to present that contribution to the world, I felt more whole, not completely, but more whole. And it was just really, really born out of a good place.
I think, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that, and congratulations. I look forward to reading the book. I actually have window open now. I'm ordering it.
Oh, thank you.
I think the important thing, Dr. Rachel, in saying that and what you just shared is writing that forced you to go through that experience yourself.
Yes.
Because without understanding each of those 6 stages or phases, or how, the structure you created to explain Flourish, without going through that experience, you couldn't come out the other end feeling whole. So it's like you needed that, was a cathartic. Yes. And it's really interesting. It was a very cathartic experience, but now you sharing that with the world allows other people to think differently. So to your point, you might show up one day and feel very healthy. Your focus might be on health. It might be focusing on legacy. That has been at the top of my mind for a couple of years now. For a couple of years, I'm like, what is my legacy? What am I leaving my children? And what is the legacy I'm leaving to have affected change in this world, to have tried to make the world a better place, and in particular for women? Like, what is it? And so I can all of what you said and suggested at each phase, I can truly resonate with. So I think it's unbelievable. And I think it'll be very helpful to women around the world. You need to pick up this book, Flourish, by Dr. Rachel-Yvonne Talton. It is on Amazon. And and I think it's just because more importantly, we can all benefit, because if we are flourishing, the world becomes a better place. You don't even think about it. We don't even think about the ripple effect that we have when we show up as our best selves and we can do all these things. So basically, it sounds like Flourish is giving people the tools to do just that. And
To
so
do that, yes.
so I'm really happy that you mentioned Flourish, because I was going to ask you about your book and you shared the story. I know now you've contributed, or you're an author of the sixth level of leadership. And how, first of all, how did you get involved in that? And what has your experience been with the sixth level of leadership?
So it has been truly amazing. So Stacy Finer, I know her just from working in Cleveland and being colleagues in the human resources space. And Kathy, Dr. Kathy and I went to Case Western together there, but Jody Berg actually,
Okay.
yes, Jody, I remember having lunch with her and she was like, okay, should I do this program? I mean, I know you're getting a lot out of it. Yeah, Jody. Yes, Dr. Kathy. And so they called me up and asked if I would like to contribute. They knew about my work, my obviously with my PhD and my work with Synergy on the topic of trust. And they also knew that I had done the Flourish Conference for Women in Leadership in 6 states for 6 years. We stopped doing the conference only because of COVID, and now it's just too. It's too much. But people keep asking me to bring it back. It really, it was about everything that I talked about in the book. It created a safe space for women to talk about, to discuss, to cry, to plan. Everyone left with a book with their name on it. Literally about the goals that they had, about the barriers that they had, etc. So anyway, so Stacy asked me to be a contributor. The first, we've all gone through a number of iterations because I think you have to kind of understand the direction that the book is taking. So my chapter went through, I think maybe 2 or 3 iterations, and then came back with no edits. So yay.
Nice. Well done.
Yes. I have to say, through my work with doing Flourish, doing Flourish, the conference for women in leadership, I learned about the 4 differentiators in the 6th level. Mutuality, which is where, leaders encourage members from diverse backgrounds to share their perspectives. We talked about shared values. Mutuality really is about a comprehensive way to understand the diversity of approaches and come out with the very best answer. Then there's ingenuity. That's about, you co-creating something spectacular with your colleagues, with your friends, and allowing, again, those diverse opinions to impact it. And then justness, obviously, that, justice is key and critical, obviously, to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, but it is really about being inclusive when you make decisions, about being fair. And when I say fair, that means really looking at every perspective and allowing that transparency in the process, recognizing people's work and promoting their sense of equity and fairness within your team. And then there's intrinsic motivation. This is really about not just money, not just external rewards, but really helping people to fulfill their aspirations as a team
Love
member.
that. Mm.
Yeah, creating a culture where employees are motivated by their own values and the fulfillment that comes with those values. And so each of, it's interesting, each of those dimensions are, we're very intrinsic in my work with Flourish, our work with Synergy, and really to sixth level leadership. One of the things that I love about the contribution in this particular book is many of these elements are, sort of come from women and those who identify as women. But this work is, it's just like flourishing. It's growing luxuriantly. You're never there. There is no there. It is a journey, right? And so you continue to question yourself. You continue to ask, am I being just in my decisions? Am I ensuring a culture with intrinsic motivation? Am I using, ingenuity and ensuring that I'm listening to all voices? Am I being mutual when as a leader, and am I listening? These are questions that all of us, women and men and humans, need to ask themselves, on an everyday basis. So I love the idea of working with elements. I mean, I guess there's a theme here, right? We are always growing. We are always growing. And how can we do that luxuriantly with ease and grace and love? So that's it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I want to just point out something that I was very attracted by in my early discussions with Stacy and the team when I first met them. And you weren't in this particular meeting, but was the conversation about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You get to the top, you're at the self-actualization. And they didn't say this at the time, I don't recall. But someone else, we were having this conversation. When you're at the top and you've self-actualized, you think you've arrived, you're there. It gets very thin at the top. The air, the quality of the air, you can barely breathe. And so when you look at the sixth level of leadership, it's like the inverse.
The inverse
paradigm, you're inverting the paradigm, and mutuality, teamwork. So bringing in all the 4 different qualities, justness, intrinsic value, what have you, that'll take you from self-actualization to building that magnificent, beautiful team around you. Yes. And they actualize as a team. I just came to me, and and so it's group actualization, if you will. But I think I was very because I've written myself about Maslow's hierarchy of needs as it relates to health, and I just think it's a fascinating way for people to think about affecting change in their organizations. How do you get, and that's just, if we go back to really base level, it's like, how do you build the optimal team?
That's right. Absolutely.
It's a simple premise if you include these things, but I do think trust is at the core. I would say,
I mean,
trust is
at the core.
It's at the core. And so if you build a culture of trust, a lot of amazing things can happen. So, wow. I mean, I love the work you're doing. I think you're making the world a better place. You're doing it in organizations. I think you just showing up in the world as you, because you attract and you put out such wonderfully positive energy. This conversation, I don't want it to end, but as the time comes to close, I have one question for you, which I think you'll love the question, which is, this is your platform to give a message to women around the world of all ages, of all backgrounds, and of all cultures. What do you share with them?
That's a really great question. I would say that I'd share 3 things with them. First of all, know thyself. Know, love, honor thyself. And I feel, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, because I know that women, intrinsically, we just need to remind ourselves to do that, to know, love, and value yourself, because you deserve it, The second thing is to understand your aspirations. Who do you want to be? I'm talking to the woman in Ghana, as you do your work there. I'm talking to the woman in Australia. I'm talking to the woman in Iran. who may not hear this, but if you ever do, think about what you do well, what, in my opinion, God, whom the person or the entity that I call God, put you here to do. What is it that you should be doing? And how can you contribute to make the world a better place? The world needs you. The world needs you so badly. So just stop and think about what are the challenges that you've overcome, and what are those gold nuggets that you picked up from the floor, no matter what you've been through, no matter what you have experienced. There have been gold nuggets there. Pull those out and use them to fuel your success. And success can look like anything you want it to look like. It doesn't have to be financial. It doesn't have to be professional. It can look however you want it to look like. But think about how you want it to look. Really think about it. And then the third thing that I would say, we are living in challenging times. We are yet to overcome the 3 pandemics that we have experienced. And the world is rife with war and hatred and so many things that are that would make people want to give up. And what I would say to you is be the opposite of all of the negativity that you see. You can be the opposite. And whatever it takes for you to wake up every single day and feel good about who you are, and take that energy out into the world and give it away. Give it away. I promise you'll get it back. I think that those 3 things, knowing yourself, understanding who and what you want to be, write it down, know it, okay? And then begin to live it. And then the third thing is to literally be the change that you want to see in this world, because the world needs you.
I'm just in awe, and I have covered in goosebumps, and I just don't know what to say other than thank you. That's a beautiful ending. That's a wonderful message. I applaud you. Very, very thoughtful, really thoughtful. And Dr. Rachel, thank you so much. You are doing so much. You're bringing that beautiful energy out with all of your, of course, all of your expertise, which only makes the world even better. So you're role modeling this every day. Thank you so much for getting under the hood with me today and sharing your story and your journey with women around the world.
Thank you. Thank you. And so many blessings to you, so many blessings to this work, and may it touch and transform in a positive way every single being that hears our voices, again, as we go into 2024.
Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Matt Butler, and edited by Matt Butler. The music is by Ayla Schaefer. Her song, Rose.